Did you know there's one country in Africa so big it swallows up space, holds enough mineral wealth to power the modern world, yet is home to a conflict so deadly it's been called the worst since World War II? It's a place where history is written in blood, geography is defined by a powerhouse river, and the culture is so vibrant it gave Africa its own rock and roll. Buckle up, because we're about to explore the heart of all that paradox in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So long before any European flags were planted, the region was home to powerful, sophisticated societies. The most famous one? The Congo Empire. Can you imagine a state that, back in the 1200s, was already a huge political and economic powerhouse? It wasn't just a tiny kingdom, it was a major player, centred in what's now northern Angola, but stretching deep into the western and central parts of the modern-day Congo. But skip forward a few centuries, and things take a dark turn. By the 16th and 17th centuries, you had European merchants, British, Dutch, Portuguese and French showing up. And what did they want? Sadly, it was slaves. The local Congo intermediaries got deeply involved in the transatlantic slave trade, and that's the point where centuries of devastating external influence truly began. Now, we hit the part of the story that's one of the most horrific episodes in modern history, and it all revolves around one man, King Leopold II of Belgium. In the 1870s, Leopold set up this private venture to colonize the massive Congo basin. Then, at the Conference of Berlin in 1884-85, the other European powers actually recognized his personal claim. And his venture, the Congo Free State, was established, headed by, well, him. What followed for the next 23 years was a pure, brutal resource grab. We're talking rubber and ivory, extracted through forced labor, disease, and unspeakable violence. Leopold's agents committed atrocities on a mass scale, and later research suggests the population may have been reduced by as many as 10 million people. The global outcry finally became too loud to ignore. So, in 1908, the Belgian state finally annexed the territory, taking it out of Leopold's private, monstrous hands and renaming it the Belgian Congo. It officially became a colony, but let's be real, the pattern of exploitation didn't just vanish overnight. Now let's fast forward to the late 1950s. The energy for independence was electric across Africa, and the Congolese people were absolutely fed up. Following massive nationalist riots in the capital, Leopoldville, which we now know as Kinshasa, Belgium finally started losing its grip. Then in 1960, freedom arrived. The Congo became independent, with the passionate nationalist Patrice Lumumba as Prime Minister. But here's the crushing reality. The celebratory period was tragically short. Within weeks the army mutinied, and then the mineral-rich province of Katanga declared independence. Belgian troops were rushed in, supposedly just to protect their citizens. The UN sent in peacekeepers, but the internal political divisions were already too deep. Just months later, in September 1960, Colonel Joseph Désiré Mobutu led a military coup and overthrew Lumumba. Tragically, Lumumba was murdered in 1961, reportedly with outside help from the US and Belgium. But the chaos had taken root, and even though Katanga's secession finally ended in 1963, things were far from settled. The initial democratic dream died for good in 1965, when Mobutu seized power in a complete takeover. That's when a 36-year dictatorship had officially begun. Mobutu was all about Africanization, even renaming himself Mobutu Sese Seko, and renaming the country Zaire in 1971. For a while, his authoritarian regime was actually supported by Western powers because he was anti-communist during the Cold War. But even with that external support, the region stayed unstable. They had to bring in French, Belgian, and Moroccan forces in 1977 to help fight off rebels who attacked Katanga. Then came the regional domino effect, meaning in 1994, the horrific genocide in neighbouring Rwanda pushed hundreds of thousands of Hutu refugees right into eastern Zaire. This massive influx and the deadly cholera outbreak that swept through the overcrowded camps around Goma. This led straight to the explosion of the First Congo War in 1996. Rwanda invades Zaire, trying to root out those Hutu rebels, which immediately pulls in other neighbours like Uganda and Angola. The war finally ended in 1997 when Mobutu was deposed by rebel leader Laurent Kabila. Kabila makes himself president, and renamed Zaire as what we know it today, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC for short. But did peace last? Nope. Kabila's new government quickly fell out with his former allies, setting the stage for the absolutely catastrophic Second Congo War in 1998. This one was truly regional, drawing in several neighbouring countries and involving dozens of armed groups fighting in the east. And an estimated 900,000 to 5.4 million people were killed or died from disease or famine. That's why it's often called the deadliest conflict since World War II, and the fighting still didn't stop in 2003. Since 2004, the Kivu conflict has been raging in the east, with over 120 different armed groups vying for control. Despite a massive UN military force deployment, the violence is relentless. Now, the DRC did hold its first free elections in 4 decades in 2006, where Laurent Kabila's son, Joseph Kabila, won the vote. But political stability remained totally elusive. Things got worse with the M23 rebellion around 2012 to 2013, because a UN report even accused Rwanda of creating and commanding the M23 rebel group, which Rwanda denied, but it shows how complicated the region is. Then President Kabila remained in power for years, in violation of the constitution, further straining everything. Most recently, the opposition candidate Felix Tshisekedi was declared the winner of the 2019 election and won again in 2023. But now let's zoom out again and really look at the land that all of this has happened on, because the Democratic Republic of the Congo is an absolute beast of a country, geographically speaking. First off, let's talk size. The DRC is right in the middle of Central Africa, and it is the second largest country on the entire continent, spanning 2.35 million square kilometres, or over 900,000 square miles, with neighbours all around. To the north, you've got the Central African Republic and South Sudan. To the east, you're up against Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania. To the southeast is Zambia, and to the southwest, Angola. Then to the west, you have that short coast, the Angolan exclave of Cabinda, and the other Congo, the Republic of the Congo, or Congo-Brazzaville. Let's quickly clear up that name thing because it can be confusing. Right now, we're talking about the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or the DRC, also called Kinshasa, named after our massive capital. And it's the biggest city in Central Africa. Oh, and remember when it was called Zaire between 1971 and 1997? Zaire is actually just a variation of a local African word meaning Great River. Which brings us to the biggest geographical deal of the entire country. The Congo River and the giant Congo Basin it drains. Most of the country is this huge central area, the Congo Basin. Imagine a vast, giant, low-lying plateau. Some geographers even call the centre a cuvette. It's French for saucer or shallow bowl. It's so low that geologists think it might have once been a massive inland sea. Today, all that's left are lakes like Tumba and Maindombe in the central region. But this giant saucer is not flat. It's surrounded by towering, dramatic rims. The eastern border is where the real action is. This is where the Western Rift Valley, the arm of the giant East African Rift System, runs right down the country. This part is the highest, most rugged, and most stunning. You've got this amazing chain of deep, tectonic lakes right on the border. Lakes Albert, Edward, Kivu, Tanganyika, and Mweru. And you know that feeling when you finally get to the top of a giant hill? This is like that, but on a continental scale. Because along this rift you'll find the Matumba Mountains, which soar up to a dizzying 11,000 feet, or over 3,300 metres. And right on the border with Uganda is the magnificent Ruwenzori Range, where the country's highest point, Margarita Peak, hits 16,763 feet, or 5,109 metres. Yes, it's got snow on the peaks, plus you've got the volcanic Virunga Mountains stretching north of Lake Kivu. It is a geological hotspot. High plateaus form the rest of the bowl's rim. In the north, the Ubangi Uele plateaus divide the water flow between the Congo and Nile River basins, standing tall at between 3,000 and 4,000 feet, or 915 and 1,220 metres. Then, down in the southeast, in the area that was Katanga province, you have the Katanga Plateaus, with high ridges like Kundalungu. So, Why are all these mountains and plateaus so important? Because the DRC's geography isn't just about beautiful mountains, it's about almost unbelievable resource wealth. The ground here is absolutely loaded with industrial diamonds, cobalt and copper. Its forests are one of the largest reserves in all of Africa. And remember that big, powerful Congo River? As it drops dramatically toward the Atlantic, it gives the DRC one of the largest hydroelectric potentials in the entire world. So you see the picture now, right? A vast, wet, powerful heart of Africa, surrounded by towering, mineral-rich highlands. It's a land of astonishing natural wealth, which ties perfectly with our next topic. So, are you ready to talk money and power? So the big picture is that the DRC is blessed with those exceptional resources and the world's second largest rainforest. But most of its people haven't benefited. It's a paradox, isn't it? The root of the problem is a long history of conflict and political mess that's led to a serious, ongoing humanitarian crisis. Remember those M23 rebels? Their resurgence since late 2021 has dramatically worsened things in the east. We're talking millions of people displaced and horrific reports of sexual and gender-based violence. The sheer scope of the security issue is staggering. Renewed offensives have allowed the rebels to control roughly 20% of the entire country's territory. But of course, there are huge efforts to find a solution. On June 27, 2025, Kinshasa and Kigali signed the Washington Agreement. And then on July 19, 2025, the Congolese government and the M23 signed a declaration establishing a ceasefire. But these efforts are constantly bogged down. Tensions are incredibly high, with continued clashes involving the army, the rebels, and their allies. Plus, you have volatile inter-community violence in provinces like Ituri, as armed groups fight over territories, and, crucially, those rich mineral resources. Despite all this, the government is trying to pull the country towards stability. The focus is on reinforcing state authority, enhancing governance, and pushing structural reforms. Why? To attract investment, and finally generate the employment that's been lacking for decades. But until the conflict is truly resolved, those efforts are always going to be walking a tightrope. Now let's dive into the money, and we have to talk numbers because they tell a very specific story. In 2024, the overall economy grew by a solid 6.5%. That jump was overwhelmingly driven by the extractive sector, like mining those minerals, which expanded by a massive 12.8% thanks to copper and cobalt production. The non-mining sectors, like the areas that really need to grow for broad job creation, only grew by 3.2%. See the imbalance there? Also in 2024, inflation showed a big improvement, falling to 11.3%, even though the national currency, the Congolese franc, still depreciated by 8.7% against the US dollar. Meanwhile, the current account deficit actually narrowed to 3.4% of GDP. Another thing, foreign exchange reserves increased to cover 2.5 months of import coverage, which is a helpful cushion. Plus, the banking sector is looking profitable with declining non-performing loans. However, the outlook for 2025 is tricky. GDP growth is actually projected to slow to 5.3% to $86.26 billion. Because even a temporary suspension of cobalt exports is expected to widen the CAD back out to 3.7% in 2025. It shows how incredibly dependent the economy still is on those export pipelines. The government is hoping that construction and infrastructure investment will boost non-extractive GDP growth to 5.3% by 2027, showing a shift toward diversification. But despite the massive mineral wealth and the positive trends, poverty remains shockingly high at 72.9%. Think about it. Almost 3/4 of the population live in poverty. So why hasn't the wealth trickled down? The problem is, even though the mining sector is a total powerhouse, it doesn't actually create many jobs. So the growth they do have isn't helping everyone, mostly because of huge, old structural problems that keep holding the country back. To fix this, they absolutely have to push through big reforms and pour massive investment into businesses outside of mining if they ever want the country to really develop. So what's the takeaway here? The DRC's economy is a giant fueled by mineral wealth, but the political chaos and that sky-high poverty rate are like huge anchors dragging it down. The real fight is figuring out how to unlock all that potential for the people who actually live there. Now let's turn the page and check out the spirit of the people that keeps the country going, despite all these challenges. First, you have to appreciate the sheer diversity. The DRC is home to more than 200 ethnic groups. In the south, you'll find powerful Bantu tribes like the Congo, Luba, and Mongo. Up in the north, you have Nilotic and Sudanic groups, such as the Zande and Mangbetu. Despite all those differences, there's a strong sense of pride and shared heritage that unites everyone. This amazing diversity shows up in daily life, especially in traditional practices. Things like initiation ceremonies, ancestor worship, and big communal celebrations are deeply ingrained. These aren't just old-fashioned rituals, they're essential markers of identity and belonging that keep the cultural heritage alive and connect people across generations. You'll even find unique groups like the Mbuti Pygmies of the Ituri rainforest, whose traditional oral literature has been collected by folklorists. Now, if you want to know what the DRC is truly famous for globally, it's the music. Seriously, Kinshasa is widely regarded as one of the great music centres of the world, and its influence is felt everywhere, especially across sub-Saharan Africa. And if you've never heard of it before, think of it this way. Congolese music is like the jazz or rock and roll of the continent. In the 1950s, musicians in Kinshasa's Matonge Quarter, like the legendary Kabesele Chamala and Francois Luambo, pretty much invented a new sound called African jazz. This style went on to influence contemporary musicians everywhere. In the 1960s, genres like rumba and soukous took over, with performers like Papa Wemba and the Grand Zyko Orchestra earning worldwide followings. They even brought new energetic dance steps like the Kavacha and Selauka that were adopted all over Africa. The most revered musical figure is undoubtedly Papa Wendo, or Wendo Kolosoi, a singer who helped lay the foundation for Congolese rumba and whose career spanned an incredible 7 decades. He was so influential that fans coaxed him out of retirement in the late 1990s just so he could tour festivals in Africa and Europe. The most popular indigenous style today is a fantastic blend of Cuban merengue, Congolese rumba, and West African highlife. That's the sound of all those global influences meeting in Congo. Music is often paired with the vibrant traditional arts. And what I mean by that is this. The DRC's ethnic groups have created a rich mosaic of sculpture, carving, and ceremonial dress, with styles unique to different regions. For instance, in the southwest, the Congo people are known for their famous stone and nail-studded Nkisi statues, traditionally believed to hold spiritual power. Moving to the south-central region, the Kuba are renowned for their intricate masks, such as the Mashamboi and their Endop statues, which were carved in the likeness of the king to serve as his symbolic stand-in. Meanwhile, Luba art dominates the southeast, often reflecting the strong influence of women in society through beautiful statuettes depicting motherhood. Finally, in the north, you'll encounter Zanda art, which features cult statuettes and anthropomorphic pottery. That's pottery shaped like human figures, while the Mangbetu are famous for figures with stylized, elongated heads. Beyond sculpture, artisans are experts at traditional crafts like wood carving, basket weaving, and beadwork. They also produce intricate paintings and pottery, all helping to preserve the cultural heritage passed down through generations. Now, from the art scene to the cuisine, Congolese food is a delightful fusion of influences. Staples like cassava, plantains, and maize form the basis of most meals. Plus, popular protein sources include delicious grilled fish and mwambe chicken. You've got traditional dishes like fufu, a starchy dough, saka, or cassava leaves cooked with palm oil, and liboke, which is meat or fish cooked in banana leaves. It's honestly an interesting culinary journey. And everything we talked about so far, from the music to the art to the food, all culminates in festivals like the colourful Kinshasa Carnival. It's the ultimate evidence of the vibrancy of the Congolese people, and it's what keeps the spirit alive despite all the challenges they're facing. So, in your opinion, which piece of Congolese culture, be it the Luba motherhood statues, the power of the Nkisi figures, or the legendary soukous music, do you think best embodies the country's famous resilience? I want to hear what you think in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this next one.